Hey folks, welcome to another episode of There's Just Something About Kansas City. Can't tell you how excited I am to have Kyle Talbot here. And you probably go, who is Kyle Talbot?
Today, I have the pleasure of taking you on a full tour of Kansas City's newest entertainment district. Welcome to Penway Point. Kansas City is not for everybody, and in this video I'm going to be going over 15 things that you should definitely know before moving to Kansas City. Today I'll be taking you on a full tour of the historic Northeast neighborhood. It's one of my absolute favorite neighborhoods in all of Kansas City.
If you are on YouTube, Instagram, and you're looking for real estate in Kansas City, he is your man. He is with Kansas City Realty Services. He is a real estate agent, but he approaches it from a very unique and modern perspective, I'd say, right? Up-to-date, tech-savvy perspective for what you do in your industry.
Well, I don't do a lot of real estate content, which I think is what makes me a little unique. I find that most real estate content is boring. So what I found is that, people enjoy Kansas City and what's going on in Kansas City, and that's kind of where moving to KC was born. So
yeah, and you it's interesting because you were born and raised here, correct? Or at least you were raised here. You went to high school here, and your backstory is extremely interesting to how you got to this, and inspirational to how you got to where you've gotten today. Talk a little bit about your background and growing up, and I know you had some really tough times there.
Yeah, so. I grew up on the Kansas side. I graduated Olathe East, but we moved around a lot. I went to 3 or 4 different elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 3 high schools. So, it was just me and my mom. She was a single parent. I was an only child. My dad left when I was young, right? So, and my mom, had some challenges, and it's always kind of this like fine line I'm trying to walk because she passed away 9 years ago. So, I like to honor my mother because she was an amazing human.
Right.
She did the best that she could, but at a very young age, I was raising myself. And, I think there's this like connotation that people that grew up in Johnson County are privileged and, that only wealthy people live in Johnson County, but that's just not the case. I mean, we were very poor growing up here, and so it's kind of the underbelly of Johnson County, if you will. But yeah, it's kind of what made me who I am today.
Yeah,
so.
sure. And at a very young age, you weren't just on your own. You basically were helping her as well. I mean, you were trying to get her through some of her trials and tribulations, right?
Yeah, I'm constantly taking care of people and not taking care of myself is kind of what that led to. So.
Yeah. Okay. So in high school, I think you told me you were at Olathe East, I think, and you said that basically through high school you're getting in with some, you're raising yourself, so you sort of gravitate to some people that are in the same situation. Sometimes that's not the best way to go. And you got saved by a counselor at Olathe East High School at that point. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so, moving around a lot in the 90s, early 2000s, I mean, it was harder to stay up with friends, right? Because, technology wasn't what it is today. We had landlines and no cell phones. So, we would move to a different school district, or, I lived in Gardner for a while. I lived in Overland Park over, North OP, close to Shawnee Mission West for a while. And then, we lived in Olathe, but we lived, throughout my time in Olathe, we lived in 4 different places, like an apartment, a duplex, a house. And so naturally, when I was in my teenage years, right, like the groups that were most accepting of people that were kind of newcomers were typically like the outcasts, right? And that's kind of what I considered myself to be, because I didn't have a very normal, childhood or home life. And I think like even, my friends' parents noticed what was going on. They kind of felt sorry for me. So they would like feed me meals and, dinners, and I'd spend the night at friends' house a lot. And yeah, I was like really close to dropping out in high school because, I was just kind of in that rebellious state. Like, Olathe is a great school district, but I just I never really fit the mold of like your traditional learning, right? But also, moving schools so many times, the curriculum's different. Like you move from one school to another, and like I ended up in 7th grade, and they were like already past long division, and at my previous school, we hadn't even learned that yet, So it was like I just kind of checked out, and my counselor saw what was going on, and I think that's the one thing about Olathe, the school district, is they have a very high, graduation rate because they're kind of in tune with what is going on with the students.
Yeah, right. So what? How'd the you can name the counselor if you'd like, but I'm just saying. And then how did they steer you into to get you out of high school, make sure you graduate?
Man, I wish I remembered the counselor's name, to be honest. But they recommended an alternative program. So it was called Mall School, actually. And when I first started going there, it was in. Do you remember the Great Mall of the Great Plains?
Yes, the Great Mall of the Great Plains. Yeah, they had the trampoline, that big place where you go in as kids and do the slides, and they had the bounce house, almost a giant bounce house.
Yeah, they had a lot of really. I mean, they had like the black light putt, and
yes,
I actually so I went to school there my sophomore year.
Wow.
So it was actually a storefront that it was like this experimental alternative program, and really what it was is it was like 3 teachers and 15 kids. So it was a lot more one-on-one learning, and a lot of it was done on the computer, which was kind of ahead of its time because this was like I graduated 04, so this was like 2002. And so all I did was my core classes, so, math, science, social studies, English. And then instead of doing like all your extracurricular and your art and, weights and that sort of thing, I went to work. So I only went to school from like 8 to 11, and then I would turn in a pay stub at the end of every week, and that counted for my extra credits, which was perfect for me because I wanted to be working. And I was like done with school. I was ready to get into the workforce. And coincidentally, my job at the time was a survey person at the mall.
You went out with that little clipboard.
Yeah. And that was kind of like my first introduction
to sales.
Yeah, to sales, and I loved it. I was super competitive. I remember like me and this other guy, we were always trying to get the most surveys, and it was easy because they were the kind where you would like pay somebody, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, you want to take a survey and make $5, So I would get out of school and literally walk around the corner, grab my clipboard, and start asking people to take surveys.
So then you get out of high school, and then what happened at that point?
I went straight into the workforce after high school, and it was, I think my first job out of high school was a warehouse job. And a lot of my friends kind of had like that manual labor, that's kind of the, path they took. So, this particular job, I was just after what paid the most money for my skill set as a, new high school graduate. And then from there, I kind of got into some construction stuff. I was doing, epoxy floors for a while, which...
Boy, that was way ahead of its time then, yeah.
Yeah, but
just getting started.
Man, like the amount of chemicals and stuff that you work, it was a messy job.
Yeah. So when did you leave Kansas City? I know you left. You probably couldn't wait to get out because of, what was going on as a younger kid, so...
Well, so, there was so after construction, I actually got hired on to my uncle's company. He owned a roofing company, and he hired me as a door-to-door salesperson. So I did door-to-door sales as a roofing salesperson for my uncle's company for a while, and then I got a marketing job here in Kansas City. And then it wasn't until 2011 that I actually left Kansas City and moved to Denver.
Okay, so you were seven years here then, working different jobs through and through. Had you had the itch to go somewhere else and do something else, or were you content here? I know you're going to end up coming back, and that's what we're going to talk about here coming up. But
Sure.
Were you sort of had a little wanderlust and one day, I think I better go check out some of the other parts of the world. Yeah.
It wasn't so much that I met a girl. And,
Okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
There we go.
And she had a job offer in Colorado, and the company I worked for at the time, it's Angie now. So if you've heard of Angie's List.
Yeah, Angie's List.
Yeah. So it used to be Home Advisor before that. And then before that, it was Service Magic. And that's what I worked for. But they purchased Angie List, and now it's just Angie. But their corporate headquarters is in Denver. So it was an opportunity for me I already had a gig, the marketing company I was working for, Angie now, and my girlfriend got this job offer. And so we were like, to heck with it. Let's move to Colorado. And in 2011, there wasn't a ton going on in Kansas City,
Exactly.
and honestly, like I kind of lived in this bubble around like Overland Park, Olathe, because that's where all my friends were. That's all we knew. So didn't spend a lot of time in like downtown, and there just wasn't a lot to do down there back then.
Yeah,
so.
There was a little bit more to do in Denver at that time.
Yeah. Well, Denver, I kind of lived through the boom in Denver, man. Like 2011, it's interesting. I go back, and now that I'm in real estate, the median home price in Denver when I moved there in 2011 was $250,000. Unfortunately, I wasn't in a position to buy a home right when I moved there, or else, I'd be rich.
Yeah,
So,
you would be, because it's probably like 1.5 million now.
It's like a 2,000 square foot brick ranch.
Yeah. So did you work for Angie's List the whole time you were there, or for Angie, or however that morphed the whole time, or then you moved on? You're in the roofing company again. Didn't you get back into roofing again?
Yeah, so it kind of came full circle. I worked at Angie for a couple of years in Colorado, and then I just kind of got burnt out with the corporate politics of it all. And so I left, and I actually did construction with a buddy for a while. We were like remodeling bathrooms and kitchens, and I actually really like that kind of work, and it taught me how to use all the tools, right? So I did hardwood floors for a little bit, that's a really I'm very thankful for that skill set, having that, because I'm a DIYer, so I love doing like remodeling on my house and stuff. But then, I got on board with a roofing company out there because, there's, as a manual laborer, again, back in that field, just kind of like a helper, I was making, shit money.
A lot of money.
Yeah,
really good money.
Yeah, well, I wasn't making a lot of money doing that, but roofing sales.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, so I was like, maybe I should get back into this, and that's what I'm good at, right? Like I like working with people and the exhilaration of getting the sale. So I worked for a roofing company out there for a while, and then I started my own company in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was a whole experience. It was fun. I
Hiring and
learned
firing,
a lot.
A lot of fun.
Part of my upbringing, because my dad left at an early age, and my mom was kind of like in and out, absent parent, I didn't have a lot of feedback, right? So like, I consider myself kind of an insecure person, and so when I started my company, I wasn't willing to do it on my own, so I partnered up with two guys.
Sure.
And that was like a really big mistake in hindsight, because I ended up doing a ton of the work to kind of set up the company, and I was the one driving it, right? But then I have to run decisions through two other people.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really get to kind of carry out my own vision of what I wanted the company
to compromise
to be.
too much a little bit.
Yeah. So, and a lot of people don't realize, if you were to think like, what state gets the most hail? Would it be Colorado?
Probably, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
They would, yeah. We get a lot here.
Yeah.
Oklahoma probably gets a lot.
Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Yeah. Texas is what comes to mind for a lot of people. But the way the storm systems like come over the mountains, they're already at like 20,000 feet. And so one thing you don't realize about Denver until you live there is they don't get warm rain. Like even during the middle of summer, if it rains, it's like freezing cold rain.
Because it's coming down from about 20,000 feet, right?
Right. So it kind of creates this environment that's like perfect for, hailstorms. So in 2017, they had the most damaging hailstorm. It was like $2.2 billion in Denver. And that's kind of what propelled me into starting my own company was that year. And we were reliant on storms. So, if it didn't hail, we were you know,
You're ticked off.
We were starving.
Come
man.
on, will you?
Yeah. With nobody, like everybody in Denver waits to get their roof done after a hailstorm.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
so in a lot
Feast or famine.
it's feast or famine. You know, you kind of put all your eggs in that basket, and you know, in 2020 we didn't get a hailstorm, so you know, it kind of put us in this position where I was looking around like, what do we got to do?
What are we going to do? So was that what precipitated the move, and why come back to Kansas City? Was it because you knew it, or was there something else that propelled you to come back? Because I know, you probably wanted to leave some of the past behind as well, but then again, you turn around and come right back to the same place.
Well, you know, it took 10 years.
Yeah, I know it did. It did.
And, you know, I always said I would never move back to Kansas City. And so when I actually told my family that we were considering moving back, they were shocked. And they were like, what? Like, this is your idea? And, you know, it wasn't just that. You know, 2020 was a year for a lot of reprioritizing.
Sure.
And,
COVID.
Yeah,
everything
COVID.
else, yeah.
And, you know, for me, I have 3 boys, you know, 2 of which were born in Denver. So they're Denver natives. And they were 2 and 4 at the time. And not having a hailstorm that year in 2020 enabled us to come back for the first time during the summer. Because you have to think about it. Summer was like my busiest time of year because it would hail usually end of May, first week of June. And then it's like, you know, that's where I made all my money, was in that 4 or 5 month stretch. So we never traveled in the summer. And because it didn't hail that year in August, we decided to come back. My sister-in-law had a new baby, and you know, something kind of switched. It's like I saw the city with new eyes. You know, like Denver is. I always say that like Denver wouldn't be pretty if it wasn't for the mountains,
Right.
having it as a backdrop. Like the city itself is ugly. And it's a high desert, right? So everything's brown, you know, like you're 5280, you know, over a mile above sea level. And so stuff doesn't grow there. And coming back in the summer and like seeing how lush everything is, because, you know, when I was younger, I didn't pay attention to stuff like that. And, you know, and there was just like this new kind of like vibrancy with the city, plus seeing my kids play with all their cousins, and, you know, something just kind of switched, and I was like, maybe we should move back to Kansas City.
So then the discussion was, are we going to do this? And then, okay, what are we going to do when we get there? Yeah. So where were we at that point with the company? Did you sell the company in Denver to your 2 partners, and then you had some money, so you came back and decided, I'm going to try something else?
Well, we had some money because we did buy a house in Denver.
Okay, eventually, yeah.
Yeah, so in 2017, we bought a house. I did a lot of work to it, and then the market here in Kansas City lags Denver. So, you know, and Denver has just been insane, you know, with growth and, you know, appreciation over the past, you know, 15 years there. But we, you know, had a lot of equity in our house, and it was this little 1,800 square foot starter home. I loved it. It was great, but I was looking around. I was like, man, you know, we're never going to be able to move up, because moving up here means like $800,000 minimum, right? To live in the neighborhood we want and the house that we want.
School district, everything, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I started looking at real estate in Kansas City, and, you know, I discovered a side of the city that I wasn't super familiar with, in the historic district in Brookside and Waldo and, you know, the Plaza area. You know, I spent some time in the Plaza, but I never really spent a whole lot of time in those neighborhoods because I grew up in the suburbs. Right. And, you know, my dream was always to own like a historic home. And I was like, man, we could get a really cool house, like in a very walkable neighborhood in Brookside. And I was like, maybe we should just list our house here, cash out. But to answer your question with my my 2 partners, I just kind of stepped out, you know, like they bought me out, and they still run the business today. They're having a great year. They actually had a big hailstorm this year.
Okay. I was just going to say,
they're doing
weather
good.
must have sucked.
Yeah. They're doing pretty good. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you come back, and then what did you start in doing? Were you looking at roofing again, or maybe to get into the real estate side? And I know you're already doing a lot of that because of what you've had to do, but what was your plan when you came back?
Well, my cousin owns a siding, roofing, window, and gutter
Perfect.
company.
Okay.
So I wasn't really ready to start my own thing when I moved back. I just kind of wanted to take a step back from that and, have some more freedom because owning a business is very demanding. You have to answer everybody's questions. You have to be more available than I like to be. And so I just went on to my cousin's company and did sales for him for a while. And it was fine. That's what I've been doing for, the last 10 years. So, but then no, my neighbor, who moved in shortly after we moved to Brookside is now my real estate broker. So, we became friends and started having a conversation. And I was like, man, I know a lot about houses. Like I've done sales my whole
Yeah.
career. I love people. I'm kind of looking for like a longer sales process, right? Because, roofing and siding and stuff like that is very short. Like, I go in, I do my thing.
It's immediate, and then you're done.
Yeah, I sign the contract, and then I don't have a relationship with them after. Whereas, like, I've always kind of like idealized the idea of like working with somebody for so long that they become your friend, right? And that's what real estate is to me, and what I really enjoy about it is the people I get to meet.
Yeah, right, exactly. So then you get a real estate license, I'm assuming, at that point, and just go from there, right?
Yeah, so I did the thing. I went to the classes. I, took the tests. I passed on my first try.
Very good. It's almost like the law, like the law boards, right? Everybody goes, I passed on my first try. And the real estate exam is tough. It's not easy.
The classes, they kind of prepare you for how to take the test, and it was good. For me, like my background was schooling, right? Because I didn't go to college. I kind of have this like narrative in my mind.
Self-learner.
Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, got my license, and then it was time to start growing that business, right? Like, because when you get your license, you are pretty much starting a business.
Right.
And so, that's kind of where that led me.
Okay. And then all of a sudden you jump off, within the last year or so, you jump off into all of a sudden, I think because you are a self-learner, you're looking at things all the time. And we're talking about other real estate companies. We're not disparaging them at all, but they just have done things the same way they've done them for years and years and years. And they take little steps. They're not, jumping out in front of it. But you jumped way out in front of it with Instagram and YouTube, excuse me. But so just explain how that you morphed into that.
Yes, I always joke that I got my real estate license and became a content creator because I, having all of the experience I have as a salesperson and construction and all these things, like that part of it is easy to me. The contracts, the negotiations, the inspections, all that stuff, I could do that in my sleep. The hardest part about being a real estate agent is generating business.
Right.
And lucky for me, my background is kind of lead gen and marketing. As well as sales. So, it started out where, I think a lot of real estate agents do. I was doing a lot of home tours and stuff like that on my Instagram. And I actually set a goal after I got licensed. I was like, I told my broker and my friend, I'm going to do 30 posts in 30 days on Instagram.
Oh,
just to kind of like, because the way I looked at it is like, I don't want to look like a new real estate agent, right?
Yeah. So you want to create a lot of content
Backlog
in a
of
short
content.
period of time.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and I did a couple open houses. I didn't want to door knock and cold call. I've done enough of that in my lifetime. I have no interest or desire to do that ever again. And so I went to an event for our brokerage, and I started talking to a lot of real estate agents and people that have their licenses. And I recognized that like real estate is very much niche, like finding your niche within the space.
Right.
Like I talked to some person that was in property management and somebody that just did commercial and somebody that was a full-time agent. And so I was enjoying doing content. And so I just kind of went down the rabbit hole of like, how can I actually use this to my benefit? And that's really where it all started.
Yeah. And so I know you love the analytics now, obviously, but you haven't been doing this for a long period of time. You think the Instagram and the YouTube's been around for a while, or Twitter or anything, or X, whatever they call it now. But the deal is you you have not been doing this for a long period of time. People might think, well, he's been listening to his backstory. He's been doing it. No, you haven't. It's only been less than a couple of years, when you started trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah. So, I think that a lot of people who coach on like doing content creation, they all talk about consistency. And so for me, it was just like trying a bunch of different content and seeing what sticks. And what I found is that most real estate content is quite boring. Every real estate agent for the most part is either doing home tours or market updates or, like little text on screens while they're, doing a pan of inside of a house, and it's just oversaturated. And so I was plugging different type of content in, but I discovered YouTube and I looked around at the competition and the people who were doing YouTube in this market, and there just weren't a lot of people that were doing it at the time. And I was like, well, I've never made a YouTube video before. I've watched a lot of YouTube, but I was like, I think I could try my hand and maybe be good at this. And so, I decided to go all in on it, and I released my first YouTube video in January of this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Of 2023.
All right, yeah.
So it's been, it hasn't been a long period of time. And you always say you're a DIYer anyway. So going to YouTube for you was like, oh, I know YouTube. I just built my house on YouTube just yesterday.
Yeah.
So to look at it and then to explore other areas of YouTube and how it could help you really helped, didn't it?
Right. Yeah. And what I recognize is how powerful YouTube is as a search engine. Because now if you Google moving to Kansas City, I come up on the first page in the video section, and that's all organic search. I haven't paid for any of that. And so, from a business and marketing standpoint, a lot of my clients come from YouTube, and they're relocating here from California, Texas, these sorts of things. So being familiar with YouTube, I remodeled my kitchen from, I always say that YouTube has been my greatest teacher, because if I ever can't figure something out, that's where I go.
Yeah.
And so once I realized that, I was like, people who are thinking about moving to a different state, that's a huge decision, right?
Huge.
And we live in this day and age where less and less people are reading and more people are consuming content through video. And so I just saw this opportunity there, and I was like, man, this makes a lot of sense. Let's give it a shot.
Sure, because if you have somebody from Texas, before they come here, they want to know a lot more about where these homes are that you're trying to sell them. And to me, I think if you watch your video, there's no hard sell here. And I think that makes people feel more comfortable. They might want to be relocating. We want to be near the airport. So, okay, we're going to look in the north side of town. Okay, we want X in our school districts. Okay, we're going to look on the south side of town. The north side of town has great schools too, but just that they just have different ideas of where we want to be close to a place like the Plaza, or we want to be where everything is happening, which is maybe closer to downtown. You just seem to have that. Your videos are terrific. I mean, they're just, you do the neighborhoods, then you do all this up and coming stuff to Kansas City and really promote the city itself, not just those, but the city itself and what you can expect when you move to Kansas City. That's why we do this podcast. There's just something about Kansas City, and you definitely are enhancing on that as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I lived through Denver.
Their boom.
Their boom, right? And then when I moved back to Kansas City, my experience of the Kansas City area before I moved is much different than my experience now living, in South KC,
sure.
Right? They're just different vibes, right? And when I relocated back here, there was some research and stuff that needed to be done there, in schools and neighborhoods and walkability and close to what kind of amenities and those are the types of questions that I'm answering on my YouTube channel. Is this is what this neighborhood vibe is like. This is how close Trader Joe's is, for example. That's a big deal to me. I actually mentioned that in one of my videos recently, because I live 5 minutes from the Trader Joe's on Ward Parkway,
Right.
and there are only 2 in the entire metro, and they're both in South Kansas City.
Right.
So, people want to know that's important to some people. If they're moving here from like a Texas or a California
Sure.
or Colorado where they have a Trader Joe's right down the street, they want to know where it is, and also what the neighborhood surrounding there is like. So that's really what that channel started out as. And then, to your point, because I lived through the boom in Denver and saw all this new development, and I see a lot of that happening in Kansas City now. It just has me more excited, and people are excited about it too. So, I've experimented with that type of content, and that's really what blew up my Instagram channel and my YouTube channel, was kind of hyper focusing on like, these are the cool things that are coming to Kansas City that people didn't really know about.
Yeah, really. And you really had to do a lot of research to dig out what is coming to Kansas City. I mean, you've done them on the KC Wheel, in the Penway Point area, but also the bridge going across the river, down to City Market, and just things that, even if the people are in Brookside, Waldo, Overland Park, the Northeast, wherever, they go, whoa, well, this is all part of the city. And these are things I can get to and are coming to Kansas City, let alone all the other stuff that is already there.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I just talked to a representative over at the KC Current.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to do a full tour of the Current Stadium before the 2024 season starts, similar to what I did with Penway Point. And I was telling this woman that they actually are responsible for kind of my exponential growth on Instagram, because the first like edited piece of content that I did on Instagram, which is really what I'm known for over there, is like that talking head, talking about like new developments coming to Kansas City. The first one I did was on the Current Stadium, and it was around the time when the new renderings came out, and I had some success over on YouTube with making some content about developments, and I was like, I have
a shot.
I have an editor. Let's
Sure.
Let's try it over here, and that one blew up. I think it has like 80,000 views right now. But my neighbor actually in Brookside, he was boating people over to the Rock Island Bridge when they were trying to get investors. So he has like a little bass fishing boat, and he knows the main developer, and so he was like responsible for like. So I kind of knew about it, and then I started doing more research, and that is one of the hardest things about creating content, is like I have to do a ton of research on these topics and present them in a way that's engaging, right? Or else it's all for naught. If I'm spending all this time making a piece of content, I want it to do well.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just interesting kind of coming full circle, because my most viewed reel on my Instagram page is of the Rock Island Bridge project. It has like, around 500,000 views.
Wow.
But I'm really excited about these projects, and that's why I make the content. Right.
I mean, that comes across that you're excited not just about that, and you're in real estate, so they know you're trying to sell a house, but there's no hard sell on it. But it just seems that, well, I just love this place,
right?
And this is a great place to live.
Mm-hmm.
And 90% of the people from outside this area, I'm from the East Coast originally, they think, what are you still doing there?
Yeah.
And of course I can always say there's just something about Kansas City, but it's true. I mean, It's just, there's something here. You can raise your family here. You can do all these great things here. And these are things, and we're not done. We're not overdeveloped. We are just still just pushing it forward, just pushing that in front of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it all started with the airport. I mean, because the first impression you have of a city is the airport, right? And I think that project is really the catalyst for the growth that we're seeing here in Kansas City now, because we're drawing a lot of people in now. I actually went to an event where the VP of Visit KC did like a keynote, and he was talking about like they collect, surveys and feedback from people who visit Kansas City, and he's like, if you think about it, we're 3 hours from either coast, right? So now that we have more of these direct flights and more accessibility, you can get in and out of the airport. and it like an airport that people want
A
to
real
actually fly
airport?
into,
Yeah.
right?
Finally, a real airport.
Yeah, and I understand. Like, I get, I hear the comments from people that are like, I hate the new airport because the last one was convenient, right? But it set us back,
It did.
and
they
so-
let it go too.
Yeah.
So it was going downhill. I mean, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And the draft and the 2026 World Cup, with that new airport, they ain't coming here.
Nope,
Okay?
absolutely not.
They said, no way we're going there. So.
Yeah. So, it's an exciting time to be in Kansas City, and to your point, like, I'm excited talking about these things because I am, truly pumped about what's happening here, and like I think these developments and the things that are happening around Kansas City are just good for the future of the city in general. Now, if the Chiefs and Royals could figure out their stadium stuff, I think that would put a lot of people at ease, but that's been a rather controversial topic
Yes,
as well.
it has. As a matter of fact, hopefully, maybe by the time this airs, it'll be all settled by that time. So,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Right.
Okay, I'm not so sure, but yeah. The other thing I want people to know is that I know you said you have an editor, but you actually shoot them all yourself, correct? And then I know you hire a guy to do your drone video, but you actually shoot now. Somebody else edits it, but you do shoot it all yourself, don't you? So you DIY'd again.
Yeah. So again, watched a lot of YouTube videos. I've hired some coaches, just because when I commit to something, I go all in. And I took a big risk with this because I did 25 videos on YouTube, and that took me about 4.5 months before I got a single client. And so a lot of the self-talk that was going on during that time was like, wow, did I make
just screw this up?
terrible decision with trying to do this? And I've already invested all this time, money, and energy into it. But I learned very early on that, editing is just not in my wheelhouse, and it's way too time consuming. And if I'm going to have a successful business, I can't do that. So I outsource that. But in terms of like my footage, yeah, I learned how to do like the more cinematic shots, and
you bought the equipment.
Yeah, I bought a lot of equipment. I have a wish list of equipment that I haven't bought yet. But it's a huge investment and a huge undertaking. There's a lot of people out there that say, well, you just need your phone to start a YouTube channel, and you can. But I think going forward, quality is going to be way more important than quantity. And so I'm constantly trying to get better, and like, how can I do better B-roll and, make this look better, to, create more engagement, because ultimately that's what gets rewarded on YouTube.
Yeah. And so now it's well established of what you do, and, you've probably got pretty good clientele, and you probably have a list behind you of people coming in to see the houses. Where are you getting the most hits? Because it's still is it still on the Kansas side, or do they like the Brookside, Waldo areas, and all those, like, where's everybody leaning to that comes in from out of town?
So most of my business is in Jackson County and Johnson County.
Oh, okay.
And it's because that is the bulk of transactions that take place in the entire metro. I mean, they're the two biggest counties. They have the biggest population. And because I live in the area, I've done a lot of content on, the country club district. So, like Waldo, South Plaza, West Plaza, Brookside. I love those areas, right? That's where I live.
You love the old architecture too, right? You love that.
Yeah, and that's something that, again, like, Denver just doesn't have really cool historic districts. Right. And so I fell in love with that part of the city. But I do a lot of content in like Overland Park and, those types of areas as well. So I'd say it's pretty split where they're moving to. I get a lot of people that are moving here from California, because there are just a lot of people leaving California right now,
which is probably a very good idea.
Yeah. But it's kind of a mixed bag. I think, I just sold a house to somebody in North KC. I mean, so it's just kind of all over the place.
What's the next big thing as you explore? And I know because you're into this. I mean, you had the bridge and the Penway Point, and you're way ahead of anybody else that's in the middle of this. What's the next big thing? Tell me something I don't know.
the next big development.
Yeah, or some place you're looking at to go take your camera and go, see this empty thing here? This is about ready to boom or whatever.
I mean, I don't know that there's really something that you don't know about, but I have been in contact with the people over at the Rock Island Bridge, and I will be doing a video similar to what we did with Penway Point, where we kind of did like a full tour.
Sure. You're on the bass boat.
Yeah. Well, I would love to like get some footage on the boat, but I don't think they need the boat anymore. But I think the South Loop Link project is I think that is really going to transform downtown Kansas City if it happens. And that's a project that I would be really excited to see here.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you been up to Omaha and seen like the Riverwalk
I have
area?
not, but I've heard about that. Yes.
Yeah.
I have not.
And then Clyde Warren Park in Dallas is another one they did. It's kind of like a cap over the highway. So it's not something that is new, but only a few cities have done it. And the same firm that did those projects is the one behind the South Loop project. Yeah. And I think it just has a lot of potential to just transform the downtown area.
Yeah, right.
So
they're talking about covering the
so it'd be
freeway.
It'd be 4 blocks.
They're
They're considering actually closing off some roads to kind of create more of a connected park. But it'll be kind of similar to what they have in Omaha and Dallas, but just green space, which is something that downtown is really lacking, right? Just having some more, trees, parks for people to go to, a big space for kids to play. It'll be, one side will be connected to the Lowe's Hotel, and they'll kind of have their own courtyard with food trucks and, stuff like that over there. And then on the other side, you'll have, Power and Light and T-Mobile, and, it'll be a great place to like go before events and, concerts and things like that. And then you could just walk over the crossroads or vice versa. Yeah. So, I am truly excited for that project, and I'm praying that it actually takes place.
Yeah, I think it might. I think they might just do that.
They've raised over the half
the money.
Yeah, half the money.
Already,
so there's potential.
It's the other half that they have a little bit of trouble getting. I can't tell you. I can't thank you enough for coming in. I think you have a truly inspirational story for someone who has had rough go of it or whatever, young, and didn't let that deter him, and just kept on going and tried to discover who they were and where they belonged in this society and all that sort of thing. Tell everybody how you get on the Instagram and the YouTube. Just type in your name, I guess. Just DIY it.
Yeah.
Just type in Talbot.
Everything is moving to KC. So if you search me on Instagram or on YouTube, you'll find me there.
Everything is moving to KC.
Yeah, I also have a newsletter, so you could subscribe to that.
There you are. And the same.
That's on my bio on my Instagram. So.
Well, like we say, there's just something about Kansas City.
There is, yeah.
And we're glad you're here. Thanks all for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
You bet.
Yeah.